When US President Barack Obama last year announced that he was going to call Africa leaders for a summit, critics said that the move, a rather late attempt to restore relations with a stronger and better Africa that was increasingly being courted by other countries. Compared to 15 years ago, when the African Growth and Opportunity Act was launched, critics argue that relations have deteriorated. They say that the African delegation should use the opportunity to send a clear message to the US administration while in Washington.
Africa has changed, and it has changed for the better, and it is much stronger. And above that, we already have continental frameworks in place which we can actually use for our engagement to make sure that our trade and investment relations do actually give us the kind of results that we want that can help our people.
The US-Africa trade so far has been based on Africa sending raw materials through limited market access, with the US enjoying better benefits. Countries like South Africa, Nigeria and Lesotho have benefited from this trade. Africa now wants more, and via the US-Africa summit, the latter has planned to gain much more than before.
The expectation of the African continent is that US can join Africa in our quest for transformation, because we have our own agenda, Agenda 2063. We have our own strategic plan, a strategic plan which envisages that we address the issue of industrialization of Africa. We address the issue of skills development, particularly for the youthful continent, so that this continent, acquiring technology, acquiring investment, can transform so that Africa doesn't remain an exporter of raw materials.
Debate around the trip is leaning towards arguments around the US need to learn from the Chinese way of doing business in Africa, that they should prioritize practical involvement in the African economies. After all, this Chinese practice is seen as the reason that the Asian giant has leapt to Africa's largest trading partner.
One of the expected outcomes of AGOA when it was initially promulgated was American companies investing and being engaged heavily in Africa. Now, that did not happen. At the same time, the Chinese companies and Chinese enterprises have become more entrenched and expanded in terms of their operations within Africa. So at least the American companies can learn that there is actually a lot of business in Africa, because the Chinese-Africa relationship has actually demonstrated that that is possible.
To do that, United States needs some major policy change, and that takes a long time.
So we are looking at how the US could perhaps open more products that are not easy to export to the US, but also support African exporters, because we export some of these products, for instance, to Europe, but exporting them to the US becomes a little cumbersome.
The theme of the summit being investing on the future of Africa, the close to 50 African leaders therefore will have a historic responsibility of emphasizing the African interest when they meet President Barack Obama. Many hope this time around the US-Africa relations grow for the better of the African continent. Girum, Chala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.